Muy buenos días. Como ustedes saben, nuestra lucha ha estado siempre enmarcada en la Constitución, en la lucha no violenta, en trabajar.
This is Juan Guaido. Juan Guaido is a man that wants power. He wants it so much that he's okay with another government toppling his government for him to get that power and to be installed in that position of president. Juan Guaido, however, has a problem today because the country that he's trying to take down, his group, his envoys, are now embroiled into somewhat of a scandal dealing with money laundering, booze, expensive hotels, expensive clothes, hookers, as opposed to giving the humanitarian, you can say, spending that money in the way that money was supposed to be spent. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. And yeah, like I said, that's Juan Guaido. Juan Guaido is trying to take power in Venezuela. He's been trying to take power in Venezuela for the past, you could say, several years. And he has had the help of the United States with the Trump administration that has been all on board to help him take that power. Maduro, whether he's a good guy or not, it's somewhat of a secondary thing on whether I want the United States to use its economic might, or for that matter, military might, to help somebody else essentially take power, a coup in that country. These are aid trucks. These aid trucks, back in February, were sent to the Colombia-Venezuelan border. These aid trucks were stopped at the border by Nicolas Maduro. And Nicolas Maduro, whatever you want to think of him, was bright and very smart to stop these aid trucks because there's no reason to believe that the only thing that in those trucks were aid, meaning aid to people to take down his government. He did accept aid from other countries that weren't trying to take down his government. So it's not necessarily the issue was the aid per se. It was more so the people who were sending that aid. Not to mention, there's something to be said that you're sending aid to a country that you're strangling with economic sanctions. If you want to send aid to stop the economic sanctions, that's stopping that country from getting insulin, stopping that country from getting diabetes or dialysis supplies, cancer supplies. If you want to send aid, just stop the sanctions. The problem that Maduro or that Guaido has today is that a report comes out in an anti-Maduro paper, no less, that Guaido and his envoys were embezzling funds, misappropriating those funds. The people who Guaido had handling the money issue were buying hookers, lavish hotels. And here's the catch. I'm going to tell you a story about this because this is a fascinating case. And I want to send a shout out to HB for sending me the story. That was the first thing I saw this morning and I read and I thought, oh my God, that's amazing. Guaido, during this humanitarian aid, right here, the goal of this was to get soldiers to stop working with Maduro. Essentially, to leave the military alone. It would be like, hey, we're trying to entice people away from the U.S. military to some other, third faction or whatever. Well, that's what the goal of this was. We're going to try to peel people away from the Maduro military. If we can get enough people to defect from the military, we'll have enough thick necks of our own to try to take down that government, if necessary militarily. Well, they got a few, not many, and Guaido's team inflated the numbers to about 1,250. An independent investigation found that they only had around half that much, around 700. And so these military personnel was spending time in a Colombian hotel, meaning this was in February. February, don't quote me on the exact date, but the story is taking place on February 23rd, but these aid trucks were before February 23rd. Guaido's made a pitch. If you come with us, you'll be a hero. And fact of the matter is, as the papers say, heroes don't starve. You and your family would have provisions, you would have food, you would have shelter, you would have whatever you need as a person to live. Medicine, the works. And so you had a few of those guys who defected to Colombia. And while they were staying in Colombia, the catch was part of the bill was going to be paid between various groups. Colombia was paying part of it. UNHCR, United Nations High Commission for Rights or Refugees, paid for a group. And then Guaido's team was supposed to pay 2 hotels. They only had 2 hotels out the bunch that they needed to pay for. The other group paid theirs. Guaido couldn't pay his. And the question is, why couldn't Guaido pay for the 2 hotels that these guys were staying at? When they started looking at it, what they found was a misappropriation of funds. 2 people, Guaido's envoys, that were responsible for ensuring that this stuff gets taken care of, was caught with just outright embezzlement. They were spending the money on all sorts of stuff other than paying for what they were supposed to pay for. And then the kicker, they were like, all right, we need to have a fundraiser. And Guaido wouldn't co-sign the fundraiser. So take a look at this. So they're talking about on that day, and again, this is a anti-Maduro newspaper, so you can hear it in the wording. Nevertheless, one perceived positive outcome of that day was that dozens of military members abandoned the Maduro regime and joined the legitimate government of Juan Guaido. The figure from February 23rd was more than 40. Within 3 days, 270 functionaries were on their way out. Gradually, there were a trickle of military members. Here's the catch. Many of the people that were quote-unquote trickling and that ended up in Colombia weren't even Venezuelan. Because of the pitch that Juan Guaido was making, some of the people were coming were from Ecuador, some were from Colombia. Some of these guys were retired military. One of the people was looking at the soldiers and they said, I can count on my fingertips the number of decent soldiers out here, someone in Calcutta said to me. You made a pitch. People who were looking for a better way to make their life somewhat better took you up on that pitch. It's just so happened these weren't the people who you were looking for. So here's another catch. And I'll just read it out. Seeing an opportunity for financial protection, soldiers who had immigrated to Peru or Ecuador, former members of the armed services, as well as civilians with false documents, presented themselves at Calcutta, echoing deceitful support for the new government of the Venezuelan opposition. The offer that attracted so many was a consequence of the rhetoric of Juan Guaido's government before February 23rd. And a Venezuelan soldier who abandoned Maduro were a hero, it would be treated like one. Surprise, heroes don't starve. I love that line. Heroes don't starve. So what brought this to light was that, like I said, the hotels weren't being paid for. And Juan Guaido only had 2 hotels. The hotel owner gets to the point where they're $20,000 outstanding. And the hotel owner doesn't know what to do. And at which point he says, I need to evict them. I have nothing else that I can do. These guys owe me $20,000 and they're not paying for it. And Juan Guaido at a certain point stopped responding to the phone calls. And so then someone asks, why don't you have the money to pay for this? And that's when it gets interesting. This became somewhat of an open secret. It was one of those things that the Colombian intelligence services started to look into. And so the Colombian intelligence services people knew, and they all almost agreed this has to be leaked. In which case, it started to hit the newspapers. Let's take a look at this part. The embezzlement. The natural question arises at this point, what happened to the money allocated to pay for the hotels where the military was staying? So, right here. On February 24th, the day after dozens of soldiers crossed the border into Colombia, President Juan Guaido signed a letter authorizing Rosa Borrera and Kevin Rojas, both activists in the Popular Will Party, to pay attention to the situation in the Venezuelan citizens, civilians, and soldiers who entered Colombian territory seeking help and refuge. Now, essentially, they're responsible for the humanitarian funds and the money. Now, it's important to note that the aid from these humanitarian trucks went to waste. The majority of it was just wasted. Now, right here. Borrera, along with Kevin Rojas, took over the entire operation, what was happening in Calcutta, and was in charge of managing the funds to pay for the military stay. The warnings were set off when, according to the Colombian intelligence official, Borrera and Rojas began to lead a life that did not correspond to who they were. I've collected all the evidence and invoices that show excesses in several bizarre, different checkbooks signed the same day with identical writing styles. Almost none have a stamp. Expenses of more than 3 million pesos in Colombian hotels and discotheques per night. About $1,000 in drinks and meals, clothing, expenses in costly stores in Bogota and Calcutta, car rental reports, hotel payments, at extra costs. Cash has been flowing, lots of money. What they mean by extra costs, meaning if I put you up to stay somewhere, you may stay at a decent hotel. You may not necessarily stay at a hotel that's going far beyond your means. And so that is essentially what was taking place. And that is the issue that these guys were having. So let's see. The government of Colombia was aware of another incident related to a number of military dissidents in Calcutta. The official figures that had the government of Juan Guaido provided to Ivan Duque indicated that there was more than 1,450 military personnel. Essentially, these guys were lying. There were only around 700 military personnel when they were inflating the numbers to like 1,450. Now, Borrera continued in her role, but the government of Colombia was already investigating her. Essentially, they kept her at that job despite the fact that she got caught doing something extraordinarily devious. And by the way, defended her. She was caught red-handed on this. And all of these guys knew that she was caught red-handed, and they still defended her in this role. Right here. In May, both Borrera and Rojas, who was responsible for the Operation Calcutta, proposed organizing a charity dinner to raise funds. Now understand what's taking place. These guys were caught red-handed. The military personnel, first they were inflating the numbers. And on top of inflating the numbers, they were using money that was supposed to be spent for dissidents and refugees on discotheques, hookers, clothing, living a lavish lifestyle, so much so that Colombian intelligence saw this and thought, something's nefarious here. These guys are doing something that they have no business doing. And started following them. And then when the bill came due, $20,000, again, this was in February, when these trucks were riding through the streets. And with that big display of, hey, you should come over, you should defect. Oh, look at this bad, horrible Maduro not letting humanitarian aid trucks that's probably carrying more of the humanitarian aid into the country. This was in, if I can get to it, when he came out and gave this big speech trying to get people to come over. This was in April. Now, the military and the people who he had, refugees, mercenaries, whoever else he can get his hands on, needed to be held up and kept all that time, meaning they were at hotels for the entire time. The humanitarian money that these guys were getting was supposed to go towards making sure that the military and their family were taken care of and kept during the intervening time period. Instead of the military and these guys being kept in the intervening time period, and mind you, they only had to pay for 2 hotels. The bill got up to $20,000 and the hotel had not been paid, and it got to the point where they were going to evict the hotel owners. Evict the soldiers. Rojas and Borrera got to the point and said, all right, let's have a charity concert. And we're going to use this charity concert to pay the money that we need to cover the expenses. And they were given no dice. No, we're not doing that at all. When the people found, they tried to do it for themselves. Because keep in mind, they had to cover their bets. They had used all of this money that was supposed to go towards a very specific, essentially, mercenary soldiers, people who can topple the government. And now that money is gone. They tried to cover their bets. They were given no dice. And it hit the fan. And now everybody's talking about it. This does not look good. And instead of, and what's his name is trying to defend him on this. Rosana and Kevin Rojas were removed from office, although between conversations, Caracas displayed an uncompromising defense of the two. They were threats and attempts to divert responsibility to the embassy of Bertie, Calderon Bertie. Now, interesting enough, Calderon Bertie had tried to pay the money out of pocket himself. I'll pay it. The check bounced. Why did that check bounce? There was supposed to be money there. Oh, This is what you get. And my point is this. Scandal is now, he's trying to explain the scandal and how these guys were this irresponsible with the money. 3 sources who requested anonymity because of the delicate nature of this topic confirmed to me that 6% of the medicines that allies of Guaido's government had donated were damaged. They showed me photos without sharing them to me. The food is rotten, one told me. Everything President Pinero sent is no longer useful. It's there. They don't know what to do with it, such that there won't be a scandal. They'll burn it, I imagine. It's a scandal already. Too late. Too late. They're talking about the humanitarian aid food that was sent from, you could say, allies of Guaido, like the USAID and whatnot. They're trying to say that the food was no good. And here are the checks. They have all the evidence. This is not in question. This is not, we think. This is, at this point, busted. It doesn't seem like Juan Guaido knew this was taking place, even though it was taking place under his watch. If you can't deal with a few people under your watch, how are you going to deal with a country? How are you going to deal with a country? Big failure for Juan Guaido and his team. Embezzlement, prostitution, threats, hookers, the works, all on his watch. This is astonishing. All right, I'm going to end this because I don't necessarily want this one to be too long, and this one has already gone 60 minutes. 2 times, Jamarl, you're on holiday again. I am not on holiday. My wife is visiting her. My wife is visiting her dad. She hasn't seen her dad in like 20 years, and so I came with her. I joined her for the trip. I didn't want her to go on her own. Jamarl, how come you keep shadow banning me because I'm white? My comments are not showing up in your videos. You can only post No, nobody's shadow banning you, dude. People have an overinflated importance of themselves. Not just you, Clyde. Somebody else said that. You're not being shadow banned. Clyde, Mitchell, he's not the best in pronouncing names. No, I'm not the best in pronouncing names. Thoughts on Iran shooting down drone? Yes, I have the video coming up next. Eric CK. Well, they shot down a drone because, it was in their territory. I would imagine we shoot down drones that is anywhere near our territory also. And not to mention, the United States has been massive provocation in that region of the world. They shot down a drone. This notion that Donald Trump is going to do some kind of airstrikes is nonsense. And Trump, to his credit, played this down. Whatever you want to think of Donald Trump, I don't necessarily think he wants to get into a larger conflict. And I think he understands if he's doing airstrikes in Iran, you're dragging yourself to a larger conflict. The media in this is obscene, and they're, what are you going to do, Trump? What are you going to do, Trump? What are you going to do, Trump? Are you going to do the airstrike? Are you going to do the airstrike? Are you going to do the airstrike? Did you hear that press conference? They're screaming these questions at him. Why is this the first? Like, it's just an odd thing where the media is asking the president right off the bat, are you going to do the airstrike? I suppose the part of the problem here is that Donald Trump has positioned himself in this way where he is, we're destroying you. Well, if that's what you're screaming on Twitter, and they shoot down one of your drones, then the first thing that the media is going to ask you, based on your red lines, based on the position that you've set for yourself, are you going to do a strike? I hope he understands, though, that the airstrike is going to drag the United States into a larger conflict. So, we'll see. We will see. Clyde, I doubt if he would lie about this or yeah, that's insane. There's probably another cause. Yeah, Clyde. I think you have a massively inflated sense of self. I would have to literally be looking at your comments and banning your comments as I'm going through when people's comments are flying by. You're not that important, dog. Like you, but you're not that important. Johnny Nice, I believe you're probably, okay, I don't care about that. Dora has become a paranoid egomaniac. 666 Marquis. I don't know enough about Dora to know what other paranoid. Just because you're paranoid doesn't necessarily mean people are not out to get you. I'll say it on that one. All right, I'm going to end this. Let's see. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through PayPal or Patreon. I have another video coming like almost immediately right back. So I'll see you shortly. Thanks all. And this.